Most people expect control to look aggressive. We are trained to spot the loud boss, the angry partner, or the overtly demanding friend. Because we keep our guard up against obvious hostility, we often miss the most effective strategy used to steer human behavior: generosity that comes with invisible strings. Control rarely begins with a demand. It begins with an unasked favor, an unexpected gift, or an overwhelming wave of early support. When someone wants to influence your decisions without triggering your natural defenses, they do not start by trying to push you around. They start by creating a sense of obligation. Centuries ago, Niccolò Machiavelli observed a fundamental pattern in human relationships. People feel bound just as deeply by the favors they give as by the ones they receive. When someone does something helpful for you, your brain naturally registers a shift in the balance between you. Long before modern psychology studied the rules of social debt, strategists understood that creating a debt is the fastest way to weaken someone's independence. Think about how this pattern shows up in everyday environments. In a workplace, a colleague consistently steps in to cover your tasks, brings you coffee without asking, or praises your work to higher-ups. In a personal relationship, someone might insist on paying for every outing, fixing your problems before you ask, or lavishing you with intense attention and praise early on. On the surface, it feels supportive. It looks like genuine goodwill. But the key to understanding this behavior lies in what happens the moment you try to make an independent choice. Real kindness is free. It leaves you feeling autonomous, relaxed, and unburdened. Strategic kindness, however, operates like an unwritten contract. The moment you accept the gesture, an invisible debt is logged on a balance sheet you never agreed to sign. This mechanism relies on a deeply ingrained psychological principle known as reciprocity. As social creatures, human beings feel an inherent discomfort when they owe someone. When a person does something nice for you, an internal mechanism nudges you to return the balance. Until that balance feels equalized, you naturally hesitate to push back against their ideas, decline their requests, or call out bad behavior. People who use kindness as a control mechanism understand this dynamic intuitively. They do not try to win your compliance through force. They secure it by making you feel like a bad person if you refuse them. By placing themselves in the role of the generous giver, they put your brain on the defensive. You find yourself agreeing to uncomfortable favors or staying quiet during disagreements simply because an inner voice whispers, "After everything they've done for me, I shouldn't make a big deal out of this." Notice the structure of how this dynamic is established. It almost always begins with unsolicited generosity. You did not ask for the intervention, the lavish gift, or the special treatment. It was pushed into your life smoothly and enthusiastically. If you attempt to decline the gesture at the start, they often brush off your refusal with phrases like, "Don't be silly, I want to do this for you," or "That's what friends are for, don't worry about it." This is the exact point where the trap closes. By framing their gesture as no big deal, they convince you to drop your guard. Accepting the favor feels like the only polite option because refusing it would make you look cold or ungrateful. But once the favor is accepted, the psychological debt is active. Watch what happens when a moment of friction eventually occurs. Suppose weeks later you disagree with their plan, set a firm personal boundary, or decide to spend time with other people. The tone changes immediately. They may not display outright anger. Instead, they deploy subtle references to their past generosity. They might drop casual remarks like, "After I went out of my way to help you last month, I expected a little more support," or "I guess my effort didn't mean much to you." In that single moment, the true nature of their initial gesture comes into focus. The favor was never a gift. It was an advance payment for your future compliance. To identify this pattern early, look past the initial gesture and examine the timing surrounding it. Ask yourself a simple question. Does this person's generosity spike right when they're trying to gain access to your time, your reputation, your resources, or your social circle? Strategic givers frequently target people who are stepping into positions of influence or individuals who hold boundaries they want to weaken. Investing in you through kindness is far less risky than trying to overpower you. It allows them to position themselves as indispensable while gradually reducing your freedom to say no. Another critical indicator is how they react to your independence. People who give out of genuine goodwill respect your right to make your own choices, even when those choices do not directly benefit them. They do not use their past helpfulness to influence your present decisions. A person using kindness for control, however, views your independence as a violation of their investment. The very first time you establish a boundary, they will act hurt, offended, or deeply betrayed. Recognizing this dynamic changes how you view social interactions. You stop reading every helpful gesture as pure warmth and start observing the structure beneath it. You begin to distinguish between those who give to build healthy relationships and those who give to acquire leverage. Identifying weaponized kindness is the essential first step. The next challenge is learning how to navigate these situations, knowing how to decline strategic favors without causing unnecessary drama, how to disarm guilt trips, and how to reclaim your independence when a debt has already been established. Once you recognize that someone is using kindness as a tool for control, the next step is learning how to disarm the dynamic without stepping into unnecessary conflict. The primary reason strategic generosity works so effectively is that it exploits your natural desire to be a reasonable, grateful person. People who use this tactic count on your hesitation to create friction. They know that most people would rather tolerate a boundary violation than deal with the uncomfortable feeling of being labeled cold, ungrateful, or selfish. Reclaiming your control requires a shift in how you evaluate these situations. Declining an unasked favor or standing firm against a guilt trip is not an act of hostility. It is a necessary protection of your personal space. The cleanest way to handle weaponized kindness is to stop the debt from forming in the first place. This means becoming comfortable with early, calm refusal. When someone offers help you did not request, an overly lavish gift, or an unusual level of involvement in your personal affairs, pay attention to your initial reaction. If your intuition tells you that accepting will create an unwritten expectation down the line, do not accept simply to keep the peace. However, the way you decline determines whether the situation resolves or escalates. If you react with suspicion or accuse them of having alternative motives, you play directly into their hands. It gives them the opportunity to assume the role of the misunderstood benefactor while framing you as overly defensive or unappreciative. Instead, use polite, immovable boundary setting. A steady, uncomplicated response leaves no room for debate. I appreciate the thought, but I have this covered. Or, that's very generous of you, but I prefer to take care of this myself. Pay close attention to what happens after you deliver that answer. A person acting out of genuine goodwill will accept your decision without issue, because their goal was simply to assist you. Learning that you do not need help means their job is done. A person seeking control, however, will usually push past your refusal. They will insist, brush off your answer, or attempt to perform the favor anyway, saying things like, "Nonsense, I'm doing it for you regardless," or "Just let me handle it, you don't have a choice." When someone refuses to accept your no to a favor, they are making it clear that the gesture is not about your needs. It is about their desire to establish a role in your decision-making. At that point, hold your ground firmly without offering long explanations or excuses. The more reasons you give for declining, the more angles you provide them to negotiate around your boundary. If you are already in a situation where you have accepted favors in the past and are now facing the expected demand for compliance, the strategy must change. This is where most people get stuck. The past favors are real, and the other person is actively using them to create pressure. They might drop subtle reminders of what they did for you right before asking for something that makes you uncomfortable. To neutralize this leverage, you must separate the past favor from the current expectation. You can acknowledge the help they provided previously while maintaining a firm boundary on the present issue. For example, if someone expects you to compromise your principles or agree to an unreasonable request because of past assistance, you can address it directly. "I genuinely appreciated your help with that project last month, and I still do. However, I cannot agree to this decision." By doing this, you dismantle the invisible contract. You demonstrate that you recognize their past contribution, but you make it clear that a past favor does not buy future authority over your choices. You are breaking the assumption that gratitude equals obedience. Predictably, when you disrupt this dynamic, the other person may respond with guilt trips, dramatic disappointment, or accusations of disloyalty. They might say things like, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me." Expect this reaction, but recognize it for what it is: confirmation of your original assessment. A person who responds to your independence with guilt is revealing that their initial kindness was never a gift. It was an investment they expected to collect on. Their frustration stems from losing leverage, not from being hurt. Another useful approach for managing relationships where generosity is used strategically is to maintain simple balance. If you choose to accept a small favor from someone who tends to keep score, equalize the balance quickly through a neutral, equivalent gesture. If they bring you lunch, handle the next one. If they assist you with a task, offer a quick, practical hand with something of theirs. By keeping the balance settled on your terms, you prevent them from accumulating a bank account of unspoken debt to leverage later. Ultimately, authentic relationships do not operate on an accounting system of favors and obligations. Healthy support is offered freely, without the expectation that it buys authority over another person's life. People who truly respect you will encourage your independence, even when your choices differ from their preferences.